The barn doors of Willow Creek's old Blacksmith forge creaked open to the crisp bite of a late September afternoon, revealing a cavernous space where the air thrummed with the clang of steel and the hiss of steam. Tucked in a quiet corner of this rural town, the forge was a living relic, its soot-stained walls and glowing hearth a testament to a craft that refused to fade. Inside, Leonard Baxter reigned supreme, a master blacksmith in his late 50s with a barrel chest, calloused hands, and a voice that could drown out a hammer's strike. He'd forged blades and tools for 35 years, priding himself on reading people as deftly as he shaped iron, who belonged in his workshop, who didn't, and who was just passing through. Today, as he pounded a red-hot billet into a plowshare, swapping gruff tales with a trio of local farmers waiting for repairs, the doors swung wide, and a stranger stepped in. A woman whose quiet tread carried a mystery Leonard couldn't hammer down, one that would reshape his ironclad world before the embers cooled. She was a black woman in her early 60s, her frame slight but steady, dressed in a drab plaid coat and a wool cap pulled low over gray curls. Her hands, weathered but nimble, clutched a worn leather pouch, and a pair of reading glasses dangled from a chain around her neck. The forge's chatter, a farmer griping about a bent plow, another ribbing Leonard about his temper, faltered for a split second as eyes flicked toward her, then back to their tasks. She eased onto a wooden stool near the entrance, setting her pouch beside her with a soft thud. Leonard, wiping sweat from his brow with a rag, sized her up with a squint. Lost tourist? Peddler? He mused, his curiosity tinged with skepticism. The forge wasn't a museum. Folks didn't just wander in, especially not on a workday. "Afternoon," Leonard called out, his voice booming over the hammer's clang. "What brings you to my fire?" The woman glanced up, her eyes sharp behind the glasses she slipped on. "Just here to see the work," she said, her tone calm but firm, signaling she wasn't here for chit-chat. Leonard grunted, tossing his rag onto a workbench. "See the work? This ain't a show. This is a forge. We make things here, not gawk at 'em." He nodded at a kettle simmering on the hearth. "Coffee's there if you want it, though." She nodded, rising to pour herself a tin mug, her movements precise. "Thanks," she said, settling back onto the stool. Her gaze drifted over the workshop, past the racks of hammers, the anvil scarred from years of blows, the farmers nursing their cups. Leonard leaned against the workbench, his arms crossed. "You're not local. Too quiet for this racket. Most folks'd jump at the noise." "Just passing through," she replied, sipping the coffee. "Taking it all in." "Taking it all in?" Leonard's laugh rumbled, drawing a smirk from one of the farmers. "Ain't much to take in. Sweat, steel, and a fire that's been burning since my granddad's day. This is my shop. People come to me, not the other way round." The farmer chuckled, egging him on, but the woman didn't budge. She set her mug down, her silence a forge wall Leonard couldn't breach. The afternoon wore on, the hammer's rhythm steady as the sun dipped lower. Leonard's curiosity sharpened into irritation. He didn't like riddles, he couldn't pound flat. "Got a name, or you just gonna perch there like a crow?" he pressed, his tone rougher now. "Ida Grayson," she said, her voice low but clear. "That's enough for now." Leonard's brow creased. "Need more than that if you're gonna loiter here. I've got blades to finish, folks waiting. You got a purpose, or you just drifted in like smoke?" "Don't need a purpose," Ida replied, pulling a small sketchbook from her pouch and flipping it open. "I'm here to watch." "Watch?" Leonard's grin twisted into a scowl. "Watch what? The sparks fly? Strange one, huh?" He muttered the last part loud enough for the farmers to nod. Ida slid a crumpled $5 bill across the workbench. "For the coffee," she said, standing with a slight stiffness, her coat rustling. Leonard's eyes narrowed. "Coffee's free here, lady. What's this, a bribe?" "A courtesy," she said, turning toward a heavy door marked Forge Master's Office at the back. Leonard's temper flared. "Hold it right there," he roared, stomping after her. "That's my space. You don't waltz in unless I say so." Ida didn't pause, pushing the door open and stepping inside. Leonard turned to the farmers, incredulous. "You see that? Thinks she's the damn queen of the anvil." The griping farmer shrugged, sipping his brew. "Reckon you'd best check, Len." Growling, Leonard charged after her, his boots thudding on the plank floor. He didn't know it yet, but the day was about to bend like hot steel, and the stranger behind that door held a truth that would temper his pride before the coals went cold. He burst into the office, ready to bellow, but the sight stopped him short. Ida sat at a cluttered desk, tools scattered, ledgers stacked, a dusty lantern flickering, flipping through a logbook with a calm that defied the forge's heat. A ring of keys, their teeth worn from decades of use, glinted beside her. "What in blazes do you think you're doing?" Leonard thundered, his voice rattling the walls. "This is my forge. Get out before I toss you out." Ida looked up, her gaze steady as forged iron. "I could ask you the same, Leonard." His name in her mouth jolted him, his breath catching. "How do you know me? And who are you to mess with my shop?" She leaned back, folding her hands over the logbook. "Because it's mine. I'm Ida Grayson, the owner of Willow Creek Forge." Leonard's jaw dropped, his mind scrambling to catch up. "Owner? You're off your nut. This is old man Carver's place, been that way since—" "Carver was my uncle," Ida cut in, her voice firm but not harsh. "He passed 4 years ago, left it to me in his will. I've been managing it from Boston, tracking orders, hearing stories. Today, I came to see it for myself." Leonard blinked, the truth sinking in like a hammer's blow. Carver, gruff, wiry Carver, had run this forge for 50 years, shaping steel and barking at apprentices until his heart gave out. Word was he'd willed it to a niece, but Leonard had pictured some brash city slicker, not this quiet woman with a sketchbook. "You're lying," he rasped, though doubt crept in. "Prove it." Ida slid the keyring across the desk. Keys Leonard knew, the ones Carver had kept in a locked tin. "These say otherwise," she said, her tone unwavering. Leonard stared, the reality forging itself clear. Ida continued, her voice measured but cutting. "I've been watching you, Leonard, for months. Heard how you treat folks, how you decide who's worth your steel. Today was the last test." Leonard's face burned, defiance warring with shame. "Test? I've kept this forge alive, made tools, kept the town going. You can't just—" "I can," Ida interrupted, standing now, her plaid coat rustling. "You've got skill, I'll grant you that, but you judge people before they speak. That ends now." She stepped past him, heading back to the workshop. Leonard followed, his bravado melting with every step. The farmers looked up as Ida emerged, Leonard trailing like a shadow. The room hushed, the forges crackle a distant hum. Ida raised her voice, clear and resonant. "Afternoon, folks. I'm Ida Grayson, the new owner of Willow Creek Forge. Took over from my Uncle Carver a while back." A murmur rippled through the trio. Wide eyes, cups forgotten. Ida turned to Leonard, her gesture firm. "And this man's done his last hammer swing here." Leonard's knees wobbled. "You're firing me? For what? A few sharp words?" Ida's gaze held steady. "For shutting out folks who don't fit your mold. For acting like this forge is yours to gatekeep. Everyone gets a fair chance here. Farmers, strangers, me. You lost that spark." The workshop buzzed with low voices. The griping farmer nodded slowly. The Ribber's jaw tightened. Leonard sputtered, "I was just keeping things tight. It's how I work." "Tight doesn't mean turning people away," Ida said, her tone final. "Pack up, Leonard. You're out." The words landed like a sledge. Leonard stood rooted, the heat of his own pride searing through him. Slowly, he trudged to the workbench, grabbing his apron and a hammer he'd carved his initials into decades ago. The farmers watched, a quiet mix of shock and understanding settling over them. Ida faced the trio, her demeanor softening. "This forge has been a lifeline for years. My uncle made it so. I'm here to keep it burning, make it welcoming. No one gets judged, no one gets turned away. That's my promise." The room broke into a soft grunt of approval. Not loud, but real, the kind that comes from folks who've toiled enough to know worth when they see it. Ida nodded, a quiet strength in her stance. Leonard slipped out the barn doors, the dusk swallowing his silhouette. He'd ruled that forge for decades, thinking he held the flame. Now he felt the weight of his quick judgments, a lesson forged deep, one he'd carry beyond the anvil's echo. Months later, Willow Creek Forge found a new rhythm under Ida's steady hand. She didn't hover, just worked the place with a calm that tempered the wildest steel, sharpening blades, sketching designs, greeting every soul who crossed the threshold. She hired a new smith, a wiry retiree named Hank who swapped tales without a hint of scorn. The locals adjusted. Some missed Leonard's growl, but most warmed to the change. The forge felt lighter, more alive, a hub where skills shone free and no one felt small. Ida kept her pouch by the hearth, her sketchbook a constant companion. Farmers and townsfolk asked about her life, her plans, and she'd share just enough. A career in tool-making, a quiet life upended by Carver's will, a vow to keep his craft alive. She listened more than she spoke, her glasses slipping as she noted details Leonard had overlooked. Tired hands needing a kind word, locals hiding their struggles. One evening, the griping farmer lingered after picking up his plow. "You've done good here," he said, tipping his hat. "Leonard was afire, but he didn't see us. Not like you." Ida smiled, adjusting her cap. "Takes years to see true. I'm still at it." He nodded, leaving a coin on the workbench before heading into the dusk. Ida watched him go, then turned back to the forge, the workshop humming around her. It wasn't just a trade, it was a legacy, passed from Carver, now hers to tend. She'd faced Leonard's bluster not for spite but for fairness, and the reward was this: a forge alive with souls, each one valued. Leonard didn't vanish entirely. Word trickled back he'd taken a job at a mill down the road. Quieter now, less bold. Some said he'd softened, others doubted it. But at the forge, his absence forged space for something richer, a testament hammered into the steel and soot that respect outlasts pride every time. For Ida, it was enough. She'd entered as a stranger, dismissed and sized up, only to claim what was hers and set it right. The forge stood as proof. Sometimes the quiet ones wield the hammer, and the loudest fires dim when truth steps through the smoke. One spark forged a new truth. This tale shows us that respect hammers pride into shape. If Ida's quiet courage struck you, drop a like to let us know. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more stories that temper the soul. What would you forge from Leonard's lesson? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We're all ears. Until next time, keep this close. True strength glows in the silent flame.